Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live. This is episode 60. I'm here with my guest co-host tonight, Diego Alcala, and I didn't say that nearly as good as Diego does, nor will I. He has already informed me. And our guests tonight are Adam Kerpelman, and also known as the Kerp, which I'm just loving. I think it's greatest. I wish I had something as good as that. And his co-founder and general counsel, Ethan Mackay. They are from, and bear with me here, they are from Juris. And their team is Juris. You can find them at jurisproject.io. A little bit of background on them. Adam is a career entrepreneur who has founded a series of successful businesses at the edge of emerging technology, from digital streaming video, which is what we're doing right now, to digital marketing, app development, and healthcare. In order to, quote, take a break from that, he decided to go to law school. And now he's working to disrupt the legal field. Our other guest tonight, Ethan Mackay, is a recent graduate of Columbia Law School and Columbia Business School, where he studied entrepreneurship, corporate law, and emerging technologies. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining. I realize that you guys, Juris covers several different solutions that you're trying to do. We're going to focus on debtsettle.co today, but if we can start with the Kerp, please tell us a little bit about your journey while I push us live to Facebook.
Sounds good. It feels like maybe the first thing I should do is talk about the take a break at law school.
Yeah. That's not the kind of break I'm used to hearing about.
Unusual choice of words.
Right. Well, it really comes down to when you've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And, you kind of have to wake up every day and make up your own schedule. It's refreshing to have a 3-year, it really feels like a break to have a 3-year period where it's like, hey, I just got to show up where they say on the schedule and pay attention and I'm doing my job, effectively. So in that way, it's a break.
Okay.
But it was also law school. It's not to say it was easy, but
it's just law school.
Not known for how easy.
Right.
So you did that. You've built several businesses, went to law school, and when you were in law school, did you think, okay, there's no way I'm not practicing. I'm going to do something different?
Yeah, actually, I'm sort of the weird case where even from day one, I knew I wasn't going to practice. I deliberately went from being an entrepreneur and sort of scaling through projects that got progressively more digital and progressively more kind of serious, I guess. The last one being in the healthcare space.
Uh-huh.
And by serious, I mean, I started making comedy videos on YouTube for, people, music videos, stuff like that. And so, progressed toward, the last one was in the healthcare space. And so I got to look at kind of regulated industry. And when that one kind of ramped down, given a family history in the law, my parents are both lawyers as well.
Okay.
I had my eye on law for a long time as sort of a field I expected to be ripe for, I guess disruption would be the way to say it.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah, exactly. I have my own thoughts on that use of terminology when it comes to the law. But I always had my eye on it, and having just come out of sort of taking a wild swing at a healthcare thing with not as much background in healthcare as you should probably have to do that, I kind of, part of the break that was law school was going to deliberately learn everything I could about, how it worked, how the legal profession worked, how all that stuff, so I could start picking at it with my knowledge of technology. This one's too complicated to just sort of take a swing at what I think lawyers do all day from watching my dad. And so, yeah, people would say, well, what do you want to practice? And I would go, oh, I don't want to practice. And then they would give me this look like, what are you doing here? I go, oh, I'm just learning. I'm getting a, equivalent of a terminal degree in the law just to have it. So
right. And when did you start? When did you and Ethan meet? Ethan, one second. Ethan, tell me a little bit about your background, because it looks like you were recently out of law school, and then you may have decided, oh, maybe I don't want to practice.
Yeah, so I should take us even further back. I met Adam at a young age. We're brothers.
Okay.
So we were with each other for a while. Yeah, I changed my last name, so it's a little confusing. Yeah, so basically he alluded to it, but I'll elaborate a little bit. So
Hold on. Did you change your last name because the Kerp was taken?
Actually, in school, people would call me the Little Kerp.
Okay.
So maybe that had something to do with it. I needed to get out of the shadow of that. Yeah, so when we were both growing up, both our parents were lawyers, and our dad would come home every day, and he had a lot of success with his own practice in Baltimore, but he would spend a lot of time basically complaining about how the justice system works. So that's, lawyers that don't know what they're doing, judges that just don't follow the law, and basically a system that isn't working for millions of Americans. And so, at the time, we're kids running around. Adam is 9 years older than I am, so maybe not a kid, but we're running around and we're hearing our dad talk about this all day. So it's kind of the first big problem that we became aware of, or that I did as a human being. And then, so I went to, basically when I came out of college, I was like, I want to change the world. This is what all the commencement speeches are about. Okay, I'm going to go do it. So first I went into nonprofits, I concluded that wasn't necessarily the solution for me. Government, concluded that wasn't really the solution. And then eventually I started finding tech, largely because of Adam's influence. So then I went to law school kind of going okay, I think there's a way that we can use technology to reform the law to make the civil justice system work better for everybody. And I got a business degree as well because I felt like Adam had the serial entrepreneurship under his belt. I was an English major who had worked in nonprofits and government, so I needed to accelerate.
Better get some credentials that are more business related.
Yeah, I need to accelerate the business knowledge a little bit. So that was the thinking there, basically.
Excellent.
Yes, that's how we got there.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about Juris, or is it Juris? Is it Juris Project? Is that just sort of the company that develops the tools?
Yeah, so that even sort of alludes to the evolution of the project. It started really kind of crazy broad and sort of when you hear about startups, or if you're in the entrepreneur space, anybody here who's running a startup, they say, well, go find a problem and then provide a solution, right? That's supposed to be the thing. Well, we started from this crazy broad moonshot problem, which was, here are these problems with the civil justice system, and these reports coming out from the ABA, they're saying things like 85% of people who should be represented are unrepresented because it's, this giant access to justice gap.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause you there because we've got Alan Rodriguez, who is on the California access to access. I always screw it up. Access to justice through innovation.
You can do this. It's a lot easier than my name.
There's too many. There's too many. Alan, write it in Facebook for us. What the name of that task force is. So Alan's watching, Aaron Levine's watching, Travis Luther is here, and Joanne Kroll is here. So if you guys have questions, once I let him get to the project, please join in. But so we're many of us are aware of these numbers.
Got it. Great. Yeah. So I can hold back on some of the stats that we use in all our investor presentations and stuff. Yeah. So it started from that, and then the Juris project was it's now become kind of the place where eventually I think our nonprofit efforts will live. But it started out as the broader exploration of, well, how can we use technology to fix that stuff? And at the time I was personally deep down a blockchain rabbit hole. So what that work ended up producing was a 60-page white paper about how to provide dispute resolution in pseudonymous and potentially fully anonymous contexts, and decentralized, all the fun buzz terms that go with blockchain madness.
And for those who've been following on Twitter, he did say, I wonder how long it'll take me to say blockchain. I think we're 11 minutes in here, so that's not bad.
I'm proud that I didn't wedge it in, though. It did come up organically.
It did. It was organic.
so that eventually then evolved into, okay, if we're going to execute on a bigger vision of how to fix this stuff with technology, which, I mean, the reality that anyone who has approached the access to justice problem realizes, it's a way bigger problem than just like the doors on the courthouse aren't wide enough or something like that, so it really comes down to, okay, well, it's a moonshot thing to try to take on this big enough problem. So we had to go and look for smaller things that we could sort of attack. And we came up with the broader approach that got us to what is now GetJuris as our sort of main hub of, accessible legal tools. And then things like DebtSettle, which are the sort of specific spin-off landing pages to really explain what each tool does for people that we're hoping to onboard to that.
Excellent. So who wants to take us in? Diego, before I jump into DebtSettle, do you have anything that you...
No, I mean, I never did a white paper on blockchain. I just want to come out saying that I am interested in the block, but who obviously is not a blockhead. So, no, but I'm interested to hear how did you, aside from your father, come up with these? How do you choose the type of projects you guys are working on? I mean, I understand that from a young age you were exposed to the evils of justice and to the discrepancies and to all that fun stuff. My wife is a human rights lawyer. I'm a public defender / criminal defender, so I understand completely all these issues. We work them every day. But I'm more, you don't come from the legal profession. You come from a house with professionals and attorneys, and I just wondered, aside from that, the motivation is there. I'm just impressed. I congratulate both of you. I just want to know if there's any particular motivation for you picking the projects that you guys are working on.
I'm happy to go, unless Ethan, you want to jump on it.
Go for it.
Really, it sort of starts from that broader mission that we were saying, and specifically bearing down on things like debt was actually a very sort of boring and analytical process. We have a weighted spreadsheet where we looked at a whole bunch of places where we thought, okay, I guess I should back up and say what the real mission of Juris project that then evolved into the sort of underlying goal with GetJuris and the sort of Juris as a company is to consider that the legal system and the legal profession, the court system and all that kind of stuff is really a bigger piece of just like human dispute resolution mechanisms. And so the way we present the real goal of Juris is to essentially build the internet's dispute resolution system. So that is to say, a layer that is truly natively digital and works the way that you would expect in a digital ecosystem, and eventually to build up to having, everyone sort of, we like to say the way they think of Google when they want to go search for something. If you have a dispute and you have to deal with it, everybody knows this is, there's a digital layer. You can go here. That's the place to start. We'll make sure you get the help you need. We'll make sure you work your way through the process. We'll make sure it's open, accessible, ideally verifiably, like algorithmically fair, things like that. But to build up to that, we started with, okay, well, what types of, niche disputes exist out there? What's the volume? How much money's moving around? We weighted all sorts of different factors like that. And so we end up with DebtSettle through sort of just a boring quantitative analysis of where we can have the biggest impact.
And I just want to make sure that you understand that in this group, boring is sexy.
Sure.
So do not say that as if it was a problem. I think that everyone
I don't think it is.
Boring.
Yeah.
When it comes to legal tech solutions, let me just say that. Not in your personal life. We can't help you out there.
Well, I shouldn't tell you the other things I've used weighted quantitative analysis to decide upon in my life.
Yeah, we probably should keep some of those to yourself.
But that's part of it. Really more broadly, it's just driven by, I think where we are with technology is a really unique place with the emergence of cloud tech and some of the ways that you can build things. Like even in my experience as a tech entrepreneur, we've evolved from a world where, just to try to get our healthcare thing going, and this was 2011 or something, we had to figure out how to accept credit cards on the internet, because short of PayPal, like Stripe and some of these other solutions just didn't exist yet. You couldn't just plug it in. And we had to, have a server on site that was like hooked into stuff. And so just the overhead on trying a project like this has come down so much that increasingly it's doable to have a service that, that feels really complicated, but only costs $10 because that's a doable business model now. And so when we started to look at that, we went, okay, what are problems that are sort of functionally, the term that comes to mind is low-hanging fruit, but there's sort of things where it's like, hey, where are places where we can help the most people by just aggressively deploying this technology that's sort of in the space of, hey, if we built this thing that's maximally efficient, maximally automated, as cheap as we can possibly make it, because we're not necessarily driven by, profit, where can we have the biggest impact? And I know, it makes us unpopular with some of the attorneys we talk to, but as a technologist, I also kind of think it's the inevitability. So I'd rather be the one that does it, I guess.
And the VC point of view, saying that you're not necessarily inspired by the profits would also sort of hamper.
That's probably not the best thing if you're pitching for money. That may not. In fact, for those in the Facebook group watching right now, I actually plucked DebtSettle from Twitter, where you were trying to communicate with Jason Calacanis, and I'm happy to have seen the tweet and said, all right, if Jason doesn't want them, I'll take them. Like, this is exactly what we talk about. So, but I have literally heard him say that whole helping people. I've heard him say that. Don't say that when you're pitching for money.
Well, luckily, the conversations we're having, it seems to be, I think the tide is turning on that a bit, and it doesn't seem to push. And we have a real test built into our system because we've incorporated as a public benefit corporation.
Okay.
So, to the core of our charter, we're bound by mission over, profit motives necessarily.
Investors.
Now, that doesn't look like we don't make money, but it does look like at some point there's a conversation to have with the board about if we check growth because we're eating too much of the world too quickly.
Right.
Which is a horrible problem to have.
Mainstream. I don't know if you guys saw the Business Roundtable, whatever 100 biggest corporations in the world. We're just talking about, financials aren't all that matters anymore. And let's return to, how corporations used to do things in the, whatever, the 20s to the 50s.
I have seen there was a couple of the big dogs were in there for that, right? And we'll all wait now to see if it's just lip service or if they're going to do something with it.
Yeah, the term is stakeholder value over shareholder value. But exactly, we'll see. I mean,
so tell us a little bit.
Sexy as blockchain, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, for us, I'd say the interesting
bit. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ethan.
Oh, I was just going to say the last thing to say there is sort of like they're not necessarily even mutually exclusive. What I was saying about sort of low accessible price points and things like that, because when you're talking about tech, you can still grow by factors by reaching more people. And so when you look at things like, 1 billion disputes coming out of e-commerce transactions or 4 billion people globally who don't have access to the rule of law, like those are incredible factors to multiply your small price by and it's just a very new thing to be able to think, oh, well, we have this widget that helps with this legal problem and it's deployable worldwide as we adapt it to different jurisdictions. And we start to say, 500 million users is nothing to Facebook.
Right.
And our technology is easier to run than Facebook. So,
right.
No.
And so tell everybody who's watching in the Facebook group what debtsettle.co does. Let's get into that, and then we'll kind of run from there.
Cool. Ethan, you want to do this one? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. So stepping back, debt collection harassment is a huge problem in this country. Every year, the CFPB estimates around 35 to 40 million people are contacted by a debt collector about a debt that they don't even owe. So it's a debt it's owed by a family member, or the amount is incorrect, or they just straight up don't owe it. So there's this huge, volume of harassment that's happening. The cool thing is that getting it to stop can actually be pretty easy because legislators have recognized this is a serious problem. So they've created these strong federal rights. The issue is that nobody knows how to activate these rights because it's coming from a dense, federal law that the average person doesn't understand. Rightfully so. It's called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And so all you need to do is send a tract letter to the debt collector that basically cites your rights that come from this federal law and asks for information, and then basically says, if you don't provide it and you keep harassing me, I do have the right to sue you. The reason this letter is so cool is because in something like 50% of cases, when a consumer sends this letter to a debt collector, the collector just gives up because you're one name on a massive spreadsheet that they have. They don't like people that fight back. And so they just go down to the next row. So you have this terrible situation, all this harassment, this letter that needs to be sent. People don't know how to send the letter. We saw that and we decided to create something that would make drafting and sending the letter incredibly easy. So that's what DebtSettle does. Drafting, sending, and then tracking it, correct? Yep. Yeah, that's right. So if you ever need to go to court, you can prove, ideally, that the debt collector actually received the letter. Excellent. And myself as a consumer who's being berated by a debt collector, for example, what do I pay for that? So we're charging $9. And that's compared to a lawyer. The average cost of a lawyer in the United States is $267 an hour. That's according to Clio. And that's also compared to debt settlement companies. So these are companies that specifically you hire to go take care of debts. Usually they'll charge upwards of $90 a month, which is a problem because if you're charging by the month, you want there to be more months than fewer. Right. So, and the interesting thing, I think, a lot of times with a debt collection agency is they will negotiate, but it can end up harming your credit more. What this is doing is stopping the harassment. That's right. Yeah. So we don't touch settlements yet. We're hoping to get into that into the future. Okay. But yeah, I mean, just as an FYI, there is an issue of debt collection agencies trying to get low payments from people in order to reset the statute of limitations on that debt. So just as sort of an FYI, look into that before you pay anything on your debts. Or you say, hey, just $10 and we'll take whatever, action. Yeah. That's like the IP laws where so the reason Warner Brothers has to make a crappy Superman movie every once in a while is so they can retain the rights. Sure. Sure. That's exactly. It's in the contract. I think it's the Fantastic Four is the one that always comes out and it's terrible, right? Yeah, like every fifth year. But they got to do it. They got to do it. That's the one I know that's like that. So tell us a little bit about the adoption. And Diego, jump in here. I know we're all podcasters here, and so we'll talk a lot, but jump in. I'll start talking Spanish from now on, just to keep things interesting. But I do see, actually, when you were mentioning the tracking of the letter that you guys sent out, I actually did imagine the blockchain going through that in an electronic format and having that timestamp and being adopted in the future, right? When you do have the opportunity to have the integrated digital arbitration, dispute resolution model that you're going for. No, actually, when you mentioned that you do have these letters, I did check your terms of service, and you do state that you're not providing legal advice. So when you came up with this particular problem to solve, how did you go about not just looking for the laws that are applicable, but how did you go about warning people? And were you guys are considered lawyers, or you guys not considered lawyers? How do you go about saying to those potential clients what you guys are at? Well, I think Ethan can speak more to the sort of the legal side. I can say from a just sort of tech and, running the business, there's a lot of
precedent we get to draft behind at this point that sort of LegalZoom and some other tech companies have set up when it comes to the distinction between legal services and attorney services. But also we picked this very specifically as one to get out of the gate because it's a really interesting problem. So the version of the letter that our system produces is sort of an aggregate of the various. The CFPB has a template, the FTC has a template. There's a few different state templates, and because all of those exist, there's already a lot of leeway for us to be in the space of, well, we're not really doing anything new here. But what we did notice, and this is my being a product and a user experience person, I noticed the stats on how low the usage of the letters was, even though all of these bodies suggest them very openly. And so I went, okay, so then that means that filling out the template is still too tricky. And
or
so,
finding it, actually.
Yeah, or finding it. And so we can even lower that bar, we can lower that bar even more without even crossing any line that they haven't already. So, if they want to come at us and call this legal advice, then they're also going to have to reckon with the fact that the CFPB is also, giving out legal advice, and the FTC is also giving out legal advice, which they say they aren't doing on their own sites. So, but Ethan, you have anything to say on the sort of the more in the weeds of the law side of it?
I think that's well said. I don't know that I have that much to add. There's a lot of precedent there. I mean, the stance that LegalZoom developed is basically there's a distinction, and an important one, between legal services and attorney services. So, there are a lot of tasks out there that are, sort of legal in nature. That doesn't mean that they're attorney services that should be governed by UPL regulations. And so that's sort of the precedent that we're
Excellent. And there's also the new sandboxes that are being thought out in California and Utah. I'm not sure where you guys are stationed. I know that you guys are in two different rooms. Hopefully not the same house, but
no, we have the whole nation covered.
Yeah, I'm in LA.
I'm in New York, and then our CT is in
Los Angeles, not Louisiana.
And your CTO is where?
He's in DC.
DC. Okay.
So we're mapping out the big cities.
And I don't know that he's watching, but I'm almost upset that you didn't invite him to be on, because I saw Constantine's photo on your site, and that mustache is amazing.
Oh, sadly.
Well, it all worked out.
Mustache is no more. Yeah.
No, it's no more. Okay. Okay.
He did. He'll appreciate it though. Whenever we used to comment on it, he would say, "I agree. It really anchors the face."
It was like, when I saw that, I was like, "How is he not on the show right now?" So, Travis Luther, a friend of ours, former guest on the show, he asks. He feels like the debt settle is a little misleading, because you're ending harassment and not settling a debt. But is that something you're planning in the future? Is that why you chose debt settle?
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't have to do another brand pivot when we roll out. Like, literally the next step for us as we develop the technology is to be able to essentially handle the other 50% that doesn't go away when the letter arrives. And, the way that would look is something like we put a link in the letter that says, hey, you can go to this simple short link and upload the evidence if you have it. And then we can get going with the next step in the process, which would be to actually work through the settlement. And so at that point, it becomes sort of a factor bigger task for us to facilitate, because it involves, mediators, possibly eventually escalating to arbitrators, things like that. I do think there's a lot we can do that's kind of automated in the space, but to say anything past that is to start to give away some secret sauce. So.
Sure. We don't want you giving anything proprietary away. It's not that show. I don't do.
So in the end, as we grow, the goal is to be able to handle the whole process and ultimately get to settlement, even to the extent that, it's easy. I think as lawyers, we can all appreciate the extent to which we're in a profession where, you know, people groan about lawyers the same way we're groaning about debt collectors. But the reality is, you know, some of the debts are legitimate, and the people trying to collect have a legitimate, you know, right to collect that debt. And so we also want to acknowledge that on the other side, and ultimately work with collectors to just to make the whole thing more smooth. So it becomes, again, just almost a user experience question. If everybody walks away happy, then, hey, we all win. So, you know.
So how has it been working so far? Let's adoption. Have you really? Because when I snagged you from Calacanis, which I'll be very happy for when you guys when you guys soared to great heights, and you were on my show before his.
With me.
Yeah, with Diego. Yeah, and so. What are you guys doing to push it out? Get people to know about debt? Is there a marketing plan behind DebtSettle right now? What are we doing? Do we have users? Are we onboarding currently?
Is this it? Is this show your launching point?
Are we launching?
Yeah,
right
I was about to say, more or less. This is our first. You caught us so early. That first day, we were out there talking about it because we launched on Product Hunt, which is a pretty inside, you know, tech product website. And so that's not even necessarily our demographic. It's a good place to get feedback from, you know, from product people.
Right.
We're just starting to edge into getting into the space of, you know, talking to the legal community, talking to, you know, other people that, not just the consumers, but we actually, well, it hasn't come up yet. We also have a pro version. So we have a version with a dashboard where, if financial counselors, financial coaches, lawyers, you know, anyone who would regularly deal with these letters also wants to use it, you can put a client in there, have a client list, send a letter on their behalf. It's the same easy process. In fact, it's an easier process because we don't take you through the wizard. It's just, hey, fill out all the stuff, hit send, letters off in the mail. You don't have to think about it. And then you get the tracking updates. So yeah, we're just starting to move into that with this, and you snagged us before our sort of official press push.
Excellent.
As a small startup, you know, the strategy I'm taking with this one is, you know, we don't really need to have sort of a thunderclap. Let's get an article everywhere all at once kind of rollout.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
We could creep up in users and, you know, get feedback. And I mean, that's the, you know, honestly, from this audience, if I had anything to ask, it would be, you know, get in there, check it out, reach out to us. We can, you know, if you want to check it out, but you don't have a real debt to deal with, we can hook you up with some letter credits so you can do it for free, get all the way through the process. Really, the most valuable thing we get right now is feedback before we really start pouring money into ads and, you know, really pushing it out there. So
it was the first time, I think, in my life when I went over and I was like, I should try this out. I guess I'd like to do that for guests when I'm going to have somebody on. And I was like, I don't have any creditors like breathing down my neck. I kind of wanted some debt so that I could I could blow somebody off.
I keep sending nondescript. You know, we have access to the back end, so I can send letters that say whatever I want them to say, just to test it out.
Right.
So I keep sending letters to family members and stuff that go, why did I just get a letter from Marty McFly? You know?
right.
But yeah, so that's really where we are. You know. Kind of.
So Ethan, I have a question. When it comes to the adoption and maybe integration with the law community, right? Do you see any other players out there in your space similar to you guys that you are looking at to take down? Not just the, yeah, you got to throw down, man. You got to do it. So my question is, it's not the legal community that it could be a tool, right, for lawyers, which is the pro version. But if you're looking at other competitors out there, who do you see out there that might be of interest to you guys? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a more diplomatic framing.
Yeah. I'm still a lawyer. So.
Yeah. So part of the reason we built this was because nothing like it existed and we felt like it should. So I should start there. We don't have any direct competitors. But I'll mention some people in the space that are doing some interesting things. So obviously the big juggernaut is LegalZoom. They don't do anything like this, but they do document generation, They've set the precedent as far as, an interview that generates a legal document. So that's, kind of similar to what we do. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I would say is a company called Do Not Pay.
No, I got the app here.
We're familiar.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
we know
got
about Do Not Pay.
we know this stuff, dude.
I forgot who I was talking to.
You're not your regular.
Right. Yeah. So Do Not Pay is doing some interesting things. Same space of automation. I would say they're taking more of an aggressive tact. What with the actual filing of lawsuits and the scripts to read in court. We didn't feel that we were ready to do something like that. We weren't sure that we could do it in a way that would fully protect consumers from the potential negative ramifications. We didn't want someone to be in court, looking down at a script, and then the judge asks them a question and they have no idea what's going on. So I'd say that's sort of the other end of the spectrum. I'll let Adam talk about, is there anyone else that comes to mind?
That's really it. There are projects that are sort of inspirations more broadly. There's things like the Civil Resolution Tribunal in British Columbia, and some similar kind of projects in the ODR space, in the ADR space. Things like that I think we're gunning toward their space. But when it comes to that realm of just disputes, there certainly are enough disputes to go around. So to even say it's competition is, again, not quite the right framing.
Yeah, inspiration's a good.
Yes. Do not try to back down that you called out Joshua Broder for his app. So
oh yeah, I was about to lay in.
And that's awesome. Good for you.
My feeling on that app is it's
going down. It's going down.
Anarchist. They just got a whole bunch of money, so
they
got some runway before they're going down. I think they're, and hopefully your community will appreciate this. I think their narrative around replacing lawyers is sort of a disservice. Ultimately, I think we have a step further down our roadmap that's really about, exploring things like gig economy. Like what does it look like to have employment for lawyers that's less based on billable hours? And the thing I like to say is billable hours don't scale. At some point, I think lawyers have to start considering what it looks like to have, a version of a legal practice that's a cluster of different services and different sort of offerings. And those offerings can be things, if you think about even like our letter sending tool, if a lawyer wants to roll that into the back end of their practice, it's $9 per letter. You can still bill out, and you can undercut. You can still bill out at higher than that and undercut everyone else you're dealing with your hours by knowing that, well, that's not one of my actual $300 hours,
right?
Because I'm using this tool to make my practice more efficient.
And we've got quite a few comments here. There's some good, and I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, folks. So I apologize if I don't get to yours, but I do want to ask a couple of them. Rahmad asks, related to introducing a new product into the market that essentially replaces the traditional service providers, what do you expect to be the biggest challenge in educating the potential beneficiaries? That was a long one, but I think it was a good question.
Sure. Well, so I'll say first on the consumer side, as the consumer beneficiaries, I think the biggest hurdle there is, especially when it comes to this problem, it's not just a user experience problem. It's also an education problem. They don't even realize that what they have when a debt collector is bothering them repeatedly, they don't even realize it's a legal problem. And so never mind all the stuff we said about the cost of lawyers, like there's for sure a hurdle in that, we are going to need to get in front of them where they are and teach them that, here's an action you can take when they're not thinking necessarily in terms of demand letters and lawyers and that type of dispute to start out. Mm-hmm. And then I would say on the pro side, it kind of goes to what I was just saying, related to Do Not Pay and all that kind of stuff, which is, ultimately it stacks up to sort of a real paradigm shift. So that's always going to be a challenge in this space. And I hope that it resonates with the legal community that really the goal the goal for us is to try to make lawyering back into more of a human profession, by which I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens at a law office and it's sort of just slotted into the space of, well, that's what lawyers do, by the general public, that we know is administrative. And so to me, that's taking this highly trained population of skilled people and having them do, and not having them sort of do, like, the way I like to say it is to bring back the counselor, right? Like I love the idea that we have all these smart people with this skill set. I want them to deploy it, helping people deal with like the emotional side of the stuff they're going through, instead of just saying, okay, whatever, but I got to go do this letter and then it's going to cost you so much you can't afford me. And then, stuff like that. So hopefully that resonates. That said, I know there's going to be some resistance. It is disruption in that way.
There's always going to be resistance. That is everywhere. Alan Rodriguez says, take a look at debtcleanse.com. He's recommending. His company did some work on them. I think something you guys may want to take a look at if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely.
And Travis Luther asks, cost. How are you going to reach 5 to 10 million consumers who are being harassed by debt collectors? And is it $9 really going to be enough?
You mean enough to cover the to get there? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I'm trying to think how to say it without giving away too much of the exact strategy, right?
Sure. And I'll say this: you can always tell me to stop talking.
Yeah.
Say
no.
right now.
One of the things that we are sort of obsessed with in working on this stuff is a degree of transparency. So I'm for sure happy to talk about everything, to the extent that I'm not giving up any sort of secret sauce for do not pay to steal. No, the reality is when it comes to the availability of data on the internet, we can actually get the same data sets that, like, once we have the capital, we can actually get the same data sets that the debt collectors have, the same way that they have, except cheaper, because we're not buying the corollary right to collect the debt in a lot of cases. So on some level, that lets us target pretty effectively the people that have our problem. So at least as it comes to digital marketing in that space, you really can't get much more granular than, being able to talk to exactly the people that have your problem. But past that, when it's such a widespread, problem that you've got John Oliver doing pieces about it on Last Week Tonight and stuff like that, I think once we can get the right momentum going and sort of get the PR ball rolling and stuff like that by sharing the video that comes out of this, I think
naturally.
Yeah. I mean, I think 9 million is,
we have just a huge audience in legal tech. But I think, it's one of those things that, I think oftentimes divorce, criminal, things like that can be very emotional. So I think there is a natural story to be told around these things that are impacting millions of people. So I think you can have some fun with the marketing in these situations.
For sure, yeah. So debt collectors are the number one complaint about industry to the FTC. So there's definitely a lot of pain, a lot of urgency to get this problem fixed. So we're hoping that, there's going to be a lot of word of mouth action and virality to, some of the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I will tell you guys from my personal experience before we wrap up here, I don't want to keep everybody too long, but my father's a lawyer and I went to law school and he had told me about this trick that you guys are now automating years ago. When I was in college, and he said, if you write a disputed claim essentially and mail it to them, they can't call you anymore, which is kind of essentially what you're doing. I don't know if it is a disputed claim anymore. And then he said, on top of that, if you threaten to report them to the FTC, they'll stop bothering you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure
And
he
our-
also taught you that applies to a lot of different dispute types.
A lot of different dispute types.
Just got to send a letter
Just send a letter.
that shows that you know the law, and
Yep.
that can settle a lot of disputes.
And I probably abused that before I should have. And and now I don't have a reason to send one.
the
So much better advice. I'm sorry.
next parental legal advice that comes after that is just ignore it. They'll go away. It doesn't really work for debt collectors, but in a
Doesn't
lot
work.
of cases.
On the opposite side of that, I've taken care of when I worked for the government. Much like Ethan, I found that was not a way to solve problems, was working for the government. But I was responsible as a guardian for people, and they would get these calls, these debt collector calls, and that's when I really started pumping out the disputed claims, because I just tell them, look, you don't have to answer the call. Folks who deal with mental health issues, who it would really stress them and add a lot to them, and so I'd have to start sending this disputed claim out on their behalf when I was as a guardian. So I know how I would get the calls from the and they are very pushy. I mean, it's really awful to people, and so I've had experience in this, which is why since we hadn't covered debt, this was an interesting topic to cover tonight.
Well, and it's very much it's sort of an analog situation, but it is a technological imbalance in that the law says you have to send a letter, manual paper letter, but they're allowed to call you. And in fact, the CFPB just proposed rules that will allow them to text you and email you that it looks like are going to pass. And so the volume of harassment is just about to triple.
Right.
And so they're using these like sophisticated tools. And then the answer is you're supposed to write a letter. So it's just a mismatch where we're, at least to the best of our ability, trying to sort of level that technological playing field as well, where, well, answering should be just as easy it is for them to power dial you and, call you up again and again.
Just got two quick comments, really too quickly. My father's a pediatrician, so he always told me not to eat the glue. And the second thing I want to say is don't ignore other languages. One of the things that you guys have, and I think it's very useful, is to actually, that low-hanging fruit, meaning that vast amount of potential customers that you guys have, are usually ignored because of the fact that it's a very English-centric issue when it's really not. This is affecting everyone. It's not just the English-speaking population. There's a lot more clientele out there than you think if you just translate that. If you look at Facebook numbers, they just, not just, but when they were in the growing phases, they doubled because they translated stuff. So, I mean, you guys, if you put that into your ethos from the beginning, it would automatically translate into higher numbers and actually improve access to justice for that much more population, which is usually, not every time, completely ignored by other tech companies that are in this space.
Yeah, I think you'll be excited about some of the stuff we have in the pipeline.
Good.
Already.
Don't spill the sauce and don't eat the glue.
It's a really great. It's so easy to forget that, but I mean, so many of the clients that I've had to deal with over the years who come to get legal help, it's because they've been taken advantage of because of not being English speaking. So it's a great point.
That's why I'm here.
That's what. Well, that plus this is the first Puerto Rico show that we had. We have not had, and you made it through the hurricane.
We made it. I'm sorry for Florida.
Yeah.
Don't shoot the hurricane, guys.
Thank you. It's a great point, Diego, and I'm glad you brought it up. And Adam, the Kerp, and Ethan, any last minute comments before we wrap up? And I don't want you guys to disappear once we've stopped recording, but any last minute comments?
I think I already said it earlier, but really kind of the last thing to say for us is, this is a cool opportunity to talk to the legal community for us, sort of ahead of, as we start to roll out more and more for consumers. So, we'd love to hear what you think. Feedback is like the single most valuable sort of nourishment for us right now as we try to get this stuff going and, try to help out. So, a lot of it is about building on the, and gaining access to the community of people that also care and believe when it comes to legal tech and access to justice. And
Excellent.
And adding to that, I would just say, if you know somebody who you think might be interested in what we're building, maybe somebody that's helping the same people with the same problems, we would love to talk to them. So definitely let us know.
Okay, excellent. And because there are so many places to find you online, because there's debtsettle.co, where do you want people getting in touch with you?
GetJuris.com or debtsettle.co are the main hubs, but Twitter is always good. I'm at the Kerp on Twitter if you want to talk to me most directly. And you can always email me at adam@getjuris.com as well.
Excellent. So getjuris.com. That I think actually I am on, I've got the jurisproject.io up on my website. And that is that
that'll do it too. They're all
redirect.
Yeah. Juris Project is even more sort of mission-y and non-profit-y right now.
Okay.
But the addresses will all get you to the same place. So extra click from Juris Project, but you'll get there.
Okay.
We're pretty good at linking it all together, so you don't get.
And how about you, Ethan? Are you also a Twitter-aholic, or?
I am just getting into Twitter. Cultivating a deep following. Yeah, it's been interesting. You can get. I'm at _Ethan Mackay _ It's not super catchy to say out loud, but I'm just learning with me.
Effective. Boring is bad.
Was the Mackay, and I apologize, I called it, I said Mackay earlier, but
oh, no worries.
It was the Mackay taken.
I didn't look into it. I guess I'm trying to, cut my own path, but
okay. We could go El Mackay, right?
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, there's a way to go. So thank you guys for being here tonight. Don't disappear. Thank you to Leb Borgerson, Rachmad Soberov, Alan Rodriguez, Travis Luther. Thank you so much, AJ Richmond, for being here on the Facebook group tonight. There are some comments over there, Adam and Ethan, so you may go and take a look at the comments. I know you guys are in the group now. You may take a look and see if there's anything in there that triggers something for you. Diego, tell everybody where they get in touch with you online.
Sure. Diego Alcala PR at Twitter. And my personal address, my email is way too long for me to say it, but just go to Twitter, look me up at the Facebook group, just say hola, and I'll probably show up.
Is there a website for your firm?
Yeah, but it's
too
in
long.
Spanish, so defensorialegal.com, and my email is dalcala@defensorialegal.com, which is legaldefense.com in Spanish. Defensoria Legal.
It sounds so good when you say it, though.
It's true. It's like mofongo.
Yeah, see, and I did that one bad when I had it. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. This is episode 60. Our guests tonight from getjuris.com were Adam Kerpelman, the Kerp, and Ethan Mackay. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Don't disappear when we stop recording.
Thanks for having us.
Cool. Thanks for having us.